Jesus tells Mary that it's not time for him to do a miracle, and then he does one anyway. So, was Jesus wrong in what he said or wrong in what he did? This is Pastor Travis with the City of Seekers. Welcome. Let's jump right into the controversy. If Jesus tells his mother that now is not the time for him to do a miracle, and then he does a miracle, doesn't that just leave us with two options? Option number one, Jesus' words were right and his actions were wrong, or rather, his words were wrong and his actions were right. Either way, doesn't that just leave Jesus as wrong? I know what you're thinking right now. How dare you? I dare. And here's why. Because asking the right questions will reveal insights too valuable to miss. So it is here. Maybe, just maybe, we'll discover an answer that satisfies. First, some scripture, then the always important context. Now, on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. Then the wine ran out. Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no wine left." Jesus replied, "Woman, why are you saying this to me? My time has not yet come." His mother told the servants, "Whatever he tells you, do it." Now there were 6 stone jars there for Jewish ceremonial washing, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, "Fill the water jars with water." So they filled them up to the very top. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the head steward." And they did. When the head steward tested the water that had been turned to wine, not knowing where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, he called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the cheaper wine when the guests are drunk. You have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this as the first of his miraculous signs in Cana of Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, Cana of Galilee was only about 7 miles away from Nazareth, hometown of Jesus and Mary. It's highly likely that the bride and groom were family friends to Jesus' family. The disciples now, on the other hand, were just acquired by Jesus in the previous chapter of John. It appears to me that Jesus and Mary were the primary invitees, and the rest of the disciples just kind of tagged along. Now, I've heard of a U+1 invitation. I have never heard of a U+12 invitation. Maybe in Utah? Then the wine ran out. Look, this was only day 3 in a 7-day wedding celebration. That's how long weddings lasted in those days, and there's absolutely no excuse for running out of wine. Cana is wine country. Vineyards surrounded Cana. Wine was an everyday occurrence. If money was an issue for a family, it was common for friends just to chip in. This was not a supply problem. This was a planning problem. Admittedly, a number of things could have happened that weren't listed in the text. Wine containers could have broken, theft could have taken place, Uncle Chuck could have showed up when he wasn't invited. We all have an Uncle Chuck. But one thing is certain. Jesus and the disciples caused a strain on the system. That's 12 plus extra people. That's a fact, and that's listed in the text. Further, in those days, in that region, given the income levels at the time, the average number of people invited to a wedding was somewhere between 50 to 100. Add an extra 12 people to that, well, there's an impact. You can't truly know Jesus' heart without scriptural context, and therefore you can't understand God's heart as well without context. That's how important context is, and this passage is no exception. Mary didn't come to Jesus to save a random wedding from disaster. She came to Jesus to save the wedding of personal friends who got into trouble because they overextended their generosity to Jesus and his disciples. Jesus would have wanted to help. He may have even felt like it was his responsibility to help. Remember that as we dive headfirst into conflict. Mary told Jesus they have no wine left. Jesus knew what she was asking. She was asking, would you please do a miracle? Jesus replies rather seriously, woman, why are you involving me? My time has not yet come. In other words, Mary, why are you asking me to do a miracle? God has given me a timeline for revealing my divine nature through miracles, and now is not it. My time has not yet come. Now, Jesus' dilemma gets almost comical here when you consider the Ten Commandments: honor thy father and thy mother. God the Father is saying, not now. Mother Mary says now, and Jesus is stuck in the middle like, really? Really? Then without any hint that Jesus would fail to do the miracle, and in full certainty that he would, Mary turns to the servants and says, whatever he tells you, do it. How could she be so certain? How did she know, despite the fact that Jesus countered her request? Even more, she was right. Jesus did the miracle. How is that possible if now is not the time? Because Jesus' love, Jesus' desire to help drove him to find a loophole. He found a third option. Mary knew that he would because his character demanded it. Jesus was in this boat with his friends. The bride and groom were generous to him. They were generous to his disciples. That's part of the reason why the boat was sinking in the first place. Jesus performed the miracle, but he did it strategically in a way that honored both father and mother and satisfied his own heart. He performed this miracle in such a way as to shroud his divine nature from anyone who could disrupt God's timeline. After he turned the water into wine, not even the head steward, the man in charge, knew what Jesus did. The only ones who appear to know where the wine came from were Mary, the disciples, and the lowly servants who, based on their class status alone, few would believe. The point is this: even when faced with what seemed to be an impossible situation, even when stuck between the will of the Father and the will of the Mother, Jesus figured out a way to save the ones he loved. Jesus figured out a way to save those who were generous to him. That's the message. Further, he did this because, just as his mother knew, this is his nature. It's who Jesus is. The message for us is that his heart has not changed. So he has been with them. He will be with us, those who are generous and loving towards him. Thank you all for joining me. It means more than you know when you subscribe, like, and share. I'm Pastor Travis. Thank you for joining me in a city of seekers.